Welcome to the Bodhi Academy. I am Mahanta and today we will continue the class 7 chapter Forest, our lifeline. So in the last class we have already seen what are forest, the different trees which are found in forest or the flora of the forest, then what is a crown and a crown of a tree and the canopy of forest. Then we have also seen the stratification in forest and we ended the class with learning the importance of forest. In today's class we will learn about the animals which are found in the forest. The animals found in the forest are also called as the fauna of forest. The animals are also called as the fauna of the forest. Now, forests provide favorable environmental conditions, food, shelter to the variety of wild animals, insects, and microorganisms. Now, as we know, many different wild animals like lion, tigers, deer, elephant, all these live in forest. Then also insects like butterflies, different kinds of butterflies, then different bugs and microorganisms, different bacteria, fungi also live in forest. Now these forests provide favorable environmental conditions like temperature, then rainfall, availability of water and food, and also place for them to stay, that is they also provide them shelter. Then the trees of the forest act as their shelter while a variety of plants and animals are their food. Now for animals, the trees of the forest act as their shelter. For example, for monkeys live on the trees, so the trees provide them a shelter, and variety of plants and animals are their food. So this will feed on the leaves or the fruits of the trees. Some bigger wild animals will feed on the other smaller animals which live in the forest. Now let us see some examples of animals or the fauna which is found in the forest. For example, deer, fox, tiger, then squirrel, elephant, different birds, woodpeckers, then orangutan or the monkeys, boar. All these are different animals which are found in the forest. Apart from these, various reptiles like snakes, then amphibians, frogs, all these are also found in the forest. Now, forests are a home to a variety of insects and microorganisms. This is because the soil of the forest is very fertile. Now, because of this high fertility, it provides favorable living conditions such as water and nutrients to these insects and microorganisms. Then forest also supports different food chains because of a complex biodiversity in the forest. Now what is a food chain? A food chain is tells us how energy is transferred from one organism to another. Now there are various different kinds of organisms which are present in the forest. For example, the plants, creepers, then large trees, then wild animals, reptiles, insects, microorganisms. All these live together in forest and form a complex biodiversity. Now these different organisms which are present in the forest are dependent on each other. They are dependent on each other for food and shelter. Now for instance, herbivores feed on the plants and carnivores depend upon the herbivores. This chain of organisms being dependent on each other for their food is called a food chain. The chain of organisms being dependent on each other for their food is called a food chain. Now we will see a diagram to understand this better. Now trees are the primary producers which will produce the food. Now a deer will feed on the fruits or the leaves produced by the tree. Now here the deer becomes the primary consumer and the tree or the grass or whatever it is the primary producer. Now the deer will act as a food source for a higher or a bigger wild animal such as lion. Now here in this food chain the lion will become the secondary consumer as it will feed upon the deer. Now another example of a food chain is here where the flower or the nectar of a flower will be eaten by the flies, and these flies will in turn be eaten by a frog, which will become the secondary consumer, and the flies will be the primary consumer. Then this frog could be eaten by a snake, so this snake will become the tertiary consumer. Then the snake again can act as a food source for an eagle or a bird. So this is how the energy will flow from one organism to the other organism, and this flow of energy is linear, so it will move in only one direction. An example in the aquatic environment is the aquatic plants will be eaten up by the small fishes, and these small fishes will be our primary consumers. Then these small fishes will be eaten up or eaten up by a larger fishes, which will be the secondary consumers, and then these fishes can act as a food source for the birds, which will dive and catch the fishes as their food. So this is an example of a food chain. Now what are food webs? Food webs show how different food chains are connected to each other. Now in nature, these food chains, now the lion for example will not only feed on deer, it can also feed on rabbits or other smaller animals. So then again, for example, a deer will not only feed on a single type of tree. It can also eat grasses, other bushes. So this is how a food web looks. So here in this example, eagle can eat a rabbit also. It can eat a snake, or it can acquire its food by eating a bird. So this is a more practical representation in the nature. Then when we say that forests provide fertile soil, what this means is that it will have the presence of humus in it. Now what is humus? It is a dark colored substance found in the soil. Humus is made up from the dead and decaying matter or the organisms. Now when the plants and animals die, these dead and decaying animals are decomposed by certain organisms and microorganisms. These microorganisms live upon the decaying matter and convert it into humus. So I'll explain using this picture. Now first, the soil will contain many nutrients and water. Now these nutrients and water will be taken up by the plant, and with the help of sunlight and these nutrients, the plant will grow and produce its own food. Now these plant leaves or the fruits will be eaten up by animals, and when these plants or the animals will die, the animals will be converted in or the animals and the plant material will be decomposed by decomposers, and the animal and plant matter will be broken down into the into the nutrients into the soil. These nutrients will again will be taken up by the plants, and this is how the cycle will continue. So what are decomposers? Decomposers are the organisms which will feed on the dead and decaying plants and animals and convert them into humus. Now the organisms which will decompose these dead and decaying matter will be called as decomposers. And I have already explained the nutrient cycles. The nutrient present in the soil are used up by the plants and insects and microorganisms. Then when these organisms die, their remains are turned into organic matter or broken down into nutrients by the decomposers. This is how the forest soil is kept fertile, and this is how the recycling of nutrients take place. This is all that we will cover in this class. Please like, share and subscribe to For the Academy.